Hey there, and welcome to today's Explainer. I am so thrilled you're tuning in because we are tackling a fascinating topic that leaves, honestly, so many pet owners completely baffled. Have you ever looked at your pet bird and thought, what on earth is going through your head right now? Well, today, we're going to completely decode the psychology of your feathered companion. We're bridging the gap between their deeply ingrained natural instincts and, well, your modern living room. And considering some parrots can literally live up to 80 years, yeah, decoding their psychology isn't just a neat party trick, it's an absolute lifetime commitment. So get ready, because we're about to unlock the secrets to a harmonious life with your bird. Let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this, because this right here is the absolute foundation of everything we're going to discuss today. Unlike dogs and cats, right, which have been bred and molded by humans over thousands of years to fit perfectly into our households, birds are fundamentally wild creatures. So when your new parrot screams at the top of its lungs, or maybe takes a bite out of your finger, or just cowers fearfully in the corner of its cage, it isn't being bad. It is simply reacting as a wild animal trying to navigate a totally unnatural human environment. Understanding this completely shifts our entire perspective from feeling frustrated to having profound empathy. So here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll look at the wild within. 2, conquering fear. 3, stopping screams and bites. 4, the plucking crisis. And finally, number 5, training and adolescence.
All right, part 1, the wild within, shattering the clean slate myth.
You know, a lot of folks assume a new bird is just this blank canvas, but we really have to shatter that clean slate myth right now. These birds come with a rich, ancient history of instincts, and this brilliantly illustrates the contrast. On one hand, you have the completely natural, normal life of a wild bird, right? We're talking loud squawking at dawn and dusk to communicate with a flock miles away, flying huge distances every day, and spending hours just constantly foraging for food. That's entirely healthy. But on the other side, look at the reality of captivity. A bird is often confined to a pretty small cage with a bowl of easily accessible food just sitting right there in front of them. They are instantly stripped of physical exertion and mental challenges. And honestly, this sensory deprivation is exactly what twists healthy natural instincts into neurotic behavioral problems. It's what turns a normal morning call into non-stop, endless screaming.
Please, if you take nothing else away, commit this golden rule of avian behavior to memory. If a bird is driving you batty, their environment is likely driving them batty too. It's almost always an environmental or psychological mismatch. But, and this is a massive disclaimer here, before you even begin to assume a problem is purely behavioral, you absolutely must take your bird to an avian veterinarian. You've got to rule out underlying medical issues first. A bird in physical pain will absolutely act out. And listen, no amount of behavioral training in the world will fix a medical emergency.
Moving right along to part 2, conquering fear and earning trust. To truly earn their trust, we have to put ourselves directly into the prey animal mindset. For them, caution is quite literally a survival mechanism. When you see a bird fluttering madly or cowering at the back of its cage, it isn't trying to be difficult, it is simply terrified. And that's exactly why we follow the trust protocol. Step 1, strategic cage placement. If you put a cage smack in the middle of a room, that bird feels exposed to predators from all 360 degrees. It's terrifying. Instead, place the cage against a solid wall in a central but calm area of your home. Step 2, silent proximity. You want to desensitize them to your presence by just sitting near the cage. Read a book, work quietly on your laptop, let them realize you exist without being a threat. And step 3, avoid predator staring. Looking directly at them with both eyes fixed, that mimics exactly what a hawk or a cat does right before it attacks. Building real trust requires silent, non-threatening proximity over weeks or even months. This is exactly how you turn a terrified animal into a calm, trusting companion.
All right, part 3, silencing the screams and stopping the bites.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how we jump into the chaos to handle it gently but confidently. These are by far the 2 most common complaints among bird owners, especially if you have a large parrot. It can be incredibly overwhelming for sure, but we're going to decode this noise together. Screaming usually stems from profound boredom or just a desperate desire for your attention. The solution? As tough as it sounds, you have to ignore it completely and only reward them when they are quiet. Now, biting, on the other hand, usually happens because of territorial defense, fear, or surging hormones. There's a myth out there that you should stop handling a biting bird. Actually, scratch that. You should wear thick leather gloves to protect yourself, handle them gently but confidently, and if they do bite, give them a calm 5-minute timeout in the cage. They absolutely must learn that biting yields 0 results. Let's dig a bit deeper into the rule of reinforcement. Picture this: your bird screams and you yell "shut up" across the house, or you run over to the cage to shush them. Guess what? You just rewarded them. You gave them exactly what they were screaming for: your attention. It's exactly like a human toddler acting out. Even negative attention is a massive win when they're incredibly bored. You literally must completely ignore the screaming, turn your back, or even leave the room if you have to. But the very second that bird goes quiet, you walk right back in, offer a treat, and give them all the praise in the world.
Part 4. The tragedy of feather plucking.
I want to shift gears to something pretty serious. When a bird begins to pluck out its own feathers, chew its skin, or self-mutilate, it is the ultimate distress signal. It's a glaring red flag pointing to severe boredom, profound stress, or an underlying physical illness. This is heartbreaking for any owner to watch, but we have to step up and perform a strict environmental audit of our birds' lives. We really have to ask ourselves a tough question. Does your cage stimulate an animal with the IQ of a human toddler? Because that is exactly how smart some of these larger parrots are. Imagine leaving a 3-year-old child in a playpen all day with just one single toy and a bowl of crackers. They would absolutely lose their minds.
So if your bird is plucking or showing signs of distress, run through this mental enrichment checklist. Are they getting a varied, highly nutritious diet or just boring old seeds every day? Is their cage actually large enough for them to stretch their wings and climb around? Do they have soft, chewable toys they can completely destroy? And yes, you absolutely want them to destroy their toys so they don't destroy your living room furniture. Are you using foraging puzzles so they have to actually work for their food just like they would in the wild? Do you leave some background noise on, maybe a TV or radio, so your house doesn't feel like a silent, terrifying, predator-filled forest? And finally, are you giving them enough one-on-one interaction? Loneliness is a massive, massive trigger for self-mutilation.
And that brings us to Part 5, Training and Avian Adolescence.
Fixing their environment is honestly only half the battle. The other half is engaging their brilliant little minds through training. And this rule right here is completely non-negotiable. Punishment causes trauma, period. You cannot hit a bird, you cannot flick their beak, and you cannot aggressively shout at them. These are highly sensitive prey animals, and punishment will permanently shatter the trust you have worked so incredibly hard to build. Training has to be built entirely on positive reinforcement. Find out what they absolutely love, whether it's a sunflower seed, a tiny piece of fruit, or a bit of plain cereal, and use that to reward the good behavior.
Let's move to and see how this builds into the most critical skill any pet bird can learn, the step up. Here's how you do it. First, hold your finger out straight, or use a wooden dowel if you're still working through some of those biting issues. Second, press it gently but firmly against the bird's lower chest, right above their feet. This gentle pressure naturally prompts them to lift a foot. Third, pair this physical motion with a clear, firm verbal cue like step up. As soon as they do it, boom, reward them instantly with that positive reinforcement we just talked about. As you're training, I want you to keep this phrase in the back of your mind. You are the benevolent dictator of the flock. Kind of funny, right? But what it means is that you are kind, you're loving and generous, but you absolutely set the boundaries. Things like cage-free manners and the privilege of sitting on your shoulder are exactly that, privileges, and they have to be earned. If your bird is hanging out on your shoulder and decides to nip your ear or pull your hair, playtime is over. They must immediately and calmly be placed back in the cage. Now, let's say your training is going perfectly, but suddenly your sweet bird turns into a little territorial monster. Don't panic. You are likely just dealing with the hormonal shift. Just like humans, birds go through a distinct avian adolescence. It's literally a teenage phase brought on by hormones. During this time, they might become fiercely territorial, aggressively guarding their cage, or they might suddenly develop intense, inappropriate romantic attachments to you, trying to nest in your clothing or even regurgitate food for you. So, the crucial point is, how do we manage these wild teenage hormones and maintain that bond? The secret number is 12. You see, in the wild, longer days signal to birds that spring has arrived and it's time to breed. To suppress that intense breeding instinct right there in your living room, you need to limit their light exposure to less than 12 hours a day. Cover their cage, ensure they get 12 to 14 hours of total, uninterrupted darkness, and just maintain gentle, consistent discipline while refusing to be intimidated by their posturing.
Wow, we have covered a tremendous amount of ground today. Rehabilitating, socializing, and training an adopted bird is an incredible journey. It takes immense patience, consistency, and a real, true understanding of the wild nature that beats inside their chest. But I have to ask you, Are you ready to meet the wild animal in your living room halfway? Because I promise you, when you finally earn the deep, unshakable trust of these incredibly intelligent creatures, you don't just get a pet, you gain a devoted, affectionate companion for life. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep observing, and I'll catch you next time.